A woman gets up in the morning, wakes up her husband and says, "Honey, I had a wonderful dream. I dreamed you gave me a diamond necklace for my birthday. What does it mean?" The husband answers, "You'll know it on your birthday." The wife's birthday arrives, and the husband enters the house with a package in his hand. The woman, excited, takes it from her hands, tears the paper nervously, quickly opens the box, and finds a book titled The Meaning of Dreams. Early one morning, a mother went to wake up her son. "Mom, wake up, son. It's time to go to school." Son, "Ugh, why, Mom? I don't want to go." Mom, "Give me 2 reasons why you don't want to go to school." Son, 1, all the kids hate me. 2, all the teachers hate me. Mom, "Oh, that's no excuse. Now get up and go." Son, "Fine, then give me 2 good reasons why I should go." Mom, 1, you're 52 years old. 2, you're the principal. A husband and wife were grocery shopping when the husband picked up a case of Budweiser and placed it in the cart. "What do you think you're doing?" asked the wife. "It's on sale. Only $10 for a case," he replies. "We can't afford it. Put it back," demands the wife. They continue shopping, and a few minutes later the wife puts a $20 jar of face cream into the cart. "What do you think you're doing?" asks the husband. "It's my face cream. It makes me look beautiful," replies the wife. "So does the Budweiser, and it's half the price," retorts the husband. A lawyer was interviewing a doctor about the death of a patient. "When you examined the patient, did you check his pulse?" asked the lawyer. "I didn't," said the doctor. "And did you listen for a heartbeat?" said the lawyer. "No, I did not," the doctor said. "So in other words," the lawyer said, "when you signed the death certificate, you had not taken adequate steps to confirm he was dead." "Well, let me put it this way," said the doctor. "At that point, the man's brain was in a jar on my desk. But for all I know, I guess he could have been out practicing law somewhere." Wife, "I have a lot of my own clothes I'd like to donate." Husband, "Why bother? It's easier to throw the clothes in the garbage can." Wife, "Don't be selfish. There are so many poor people who have no clothes and are starving." Husband, "Honey, anyone who fits into your clothing is not starving." A man rushing to catch a train approaches a farmer near a field and asks, "Excuse me, sir, would it be all right if I crossed your field? I'm in a hurry to catch the 4:23 train." The farmer, with a grin, replies, "Go ahead, no problem. But if my bull spots you, you'll probably catch the 4:11 instead." A woman strolls into a busy restaurant, followed by 15 energetic kids who immediately start goofing around as she tries to place an order with the waitress. Growing impatient, the mom finally yells, "Eddie, stop that, or else!" Instantly, all 15 boys freeze, sit down, and fall silent. The waitress, looking puzzled, asks, "Wait, did you really name all asterisk of your boys Eddie?" "Yep," the woman replies. "Makes it easier than trying to remember who's who every time." The waitress chuckles and asks, "But what if you only need to talk to one of them?" With a grin, the mom says, "Oh, that's easy. I just call them by their last names." 23 years girl married to rich old man. The next morning she walks, step by painful. Mother asks, "What happened?" The bride, barely able to stand, sighed and whispered, "At a quaint tourist hotel." There was a lot of chatter about the afternoon wedding. The groom was 95, while his bride was just 23. The groom looked fragile, and many were concerned that their wedding night might be his last, especially with such a vibrant young bride by his side. But to everyone's amazement, it was the bride who made the headlines the next morning. She descended the staircase, clutching the banister step by painful step, looking utterly exhausted. Reaching the front desk, the hotel clerk couldn't hide his shock. "Goodness dear, you look like you've been through a marathon. What happened?" The bride, out of breath and barely able to stand, sighed and whispered, "He told me he'd been saving up for 75 years. I thought he was talking about his money." Mitzi and Milda were talking about their grandchildren after the holidays. Mitzi said, "My daughter-in-law stopped making my grandchildren send their thank you notes. Each year I sent the grandchildren a card with a generous check inside. I always received a lovely thank you note. However, since my daughter-in-law stopped making the grandkids send thank you notes, I never hear from them." Milda said, "My daughter-in-law never made the grandchildren send thank you notes. I too send them a very generous check. However, for the past several years, I hear from them within a week after they receive it. In fact, they each pay me a personal visit." "Wow," remarked Mitzi. "I wish mine would do that." "You can, Mitzi, you can." "How?" Mitzi asked. "Simple," Milda replied. "Do what I do. Don't sign the check." A man has to drive for a few days to get to his new house. After a long and tiring drive throughout the night, the driver decides to pull over on the side of the road to take a nap. A man knocks on the car's window, and this wakes the driver from his sleep. The man asks the driver what time it is. The driver looks at his watch and replies, "It's 8 a.m.," and goes back to sleep. After a while, another man knocks on the car's window and wakes the driver from his sleep. This man also asks the driver what time it is. The driver replies, "It's 8:05 a.m.," and goes back to sleep. Sure enough, after a while, again, another man knocks on the car's window and asks the same question. The driver, now annoyed, replies, "It's 8:07 a.m." He picks up a piece of paper and writes in bold letters, "I don't know what time it is," sticks it on the car's window, and goes back to sleep. The driver is again woken from his sleep by a knock on his window. The man knocking on the window says, "It's 8:10 a.m. You're welcome." Two priests decided to go to Thailand on vacation. They were determined to make this a real vacation by not wearing anything that would identify them as priests. For once, they'd enjoy a vacation as regular people. As soon as the plane landed, they headed for a store and bought some really outrageous shorts, shirts, sandals, sunglasses, etc. The next morning, they went to the beach dressed in their tourist garb. They were sitting on the beach chairs, enjoying a drink, the sunshine and the scenery, when a drop-dead, gorgeous blonde in a bikini came walking straight towards them. They couldn't help but stare. As the blonde passed them, she smiled and said, "Good morning, Father," and "Good morning, Father," nodding and addressing each of them individually. Then she passed on by. They were both stunned. How in the world did she know they were priests? So the next day, they went back to the store and bought even more outrageous outfits. These were so loud you could hear them before you even saw them. Once again, in their new attire, they settled down in their chairs to enjoy the sunshine. After a little while, the same gorgeous blonde, wearing a different colored bikini, taking her sweet time, came walking toward them. Again, she nodded at each of them, said, "Good morning, Father," and "Good morning, Father," and started to walk away. One of the priests couldn't stand it any longer and said, "Just a minute, young lady." "Yes, Father. We are priests and proud of it, but I have to know, how in the world do you know we are priests, dressed as we are?" "Father, it's me," she replied, "Sister Agatha." A man goes to the doctor, feeling a little ill. The doctor checks him over and says, "Sorry, I have some bad news. You have yellow 24, a really nasty virus. It's called yellow 24 because it turns your blood yellow, and you usually only have 24 hours to live. There's no known cure, so just go home and enjoy your final precious moments on Earth." So he trudges home to his wife and breaks the news. Distraught, she asks him to go to the bingo with her that evening, as he's never been there with her before. They arrive at the bingo, and with his first card, he gets 4 corners and wins $35. Then, with the same card, he gets a line and wins $320. Then he gets the full house and wins $1,000. Then the national grid comes up, and he wins that too, getting $380,000. The bingo caller gets him up on stage and says, "Son, I've been here 20 years, and I've never seen anyone win 4 corners, a line, the full house, or the national grid on the same card. You must be the luckiest man on earth." "Lucky?" he screamed. "Lucky? I'll have you know that I've got yellow 24. "Wow," says the bingo caller. "Yellow 24. You've won the raffle as well." A lawyer calls up a plumber to come out to his house. The plumber takes a look and says, "Okay, I can fix it today, and it will be $800. The lawyer raises an eyebrow and asks, "How long will it take?" The plumber responds, "Well, I need about an hour round trip to the supply house for a part, and then it should take me about an hour for the repair." The lawyer smirks and says, "2 hours for $800? That's $400 per hour. I'm a lawyer and my hourly rate is $350 an hour." The plumber nods and says, "Yes, sir, I understand. Why is it you think I gave up my law practice?" One day, a man rushed into a restaurant and quickly took a seat. When the waitress arrived at his table, he said, "Look, I'm in a hurry. Please bring me a coffee and a menu." The waitress scurried away and soon returned with a steaming cup of coffee and a menu. As she placed the coffee down, the man noticed her thumb was noticeably dipped in his drink. He shot her a disapproving look, pushed the menu back toward her and said, "Forget it. Just bring me a bowl of soup, okay?" Once again, the waitress hurried off and soon returned with his soup. But as she set the bowl down, he noticed, just like before, her thumb was submerged in his meal. Irritated, he snapped, "All right, what's with the thumb?" The waitress blinked. "Excuse me?" "Yeah, excuse me is right. First you bring my coffee with your thumb in it. Now my soup? What's going on here?" She sighed and replied, "Well, I slammed my thumb in a door yesterday, and my doctor told me to keep it somewhere warm." The man scowled. "Then why don't you just shove it up your butt?" With a shrug, she replied, "Oh, I do, when I'm in the kitchen." This is a conversation between a man and a woman. Please note that she asked 5 or 6 questions, which he answered quite simply. But then she was speechless after answering only one question. Woman: "Do you drink beer?" Man: "Yes." Woman: "How many beers a day?" Man: "Usually about 3. Woman: "How much do you pay per beer?" Man: $5, which includes a tip. This is where it gets scary. Woman: "And how long have you been drinking?" Man: "About 20 years, I suppose." Woman: "So a beer costs $5 and you have 3 beers a day, which puts your spending each month at $450. In 1 year, that would be approximately $5,400, correct?" Man: "Correct." Woman: "If in 1 year you spend $5,400 not accounting for inflation, the past 20 years puts your spending at $108,000, correct?" Man: "Correct." Woman: "Do you know that if you didn't drink so much beer, that money could have been put in a step-up interest savings account, and after accounting for compound interest for the past 20 years, you could have by now bought an airplane?" Man: "Do you drink beer?" Woman: "No." Man: "Where's your airplane?" An elderly couple, a priest and a doctor, walk into a bar. As they settle down with their drinks, the conversation eventually turns philosophical, and they find themselves debating the age-old question: when does life begin? The priest, tapping his Bible, confidently states, "Life begins at conception." Jeremiah 1:5 says, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you." This is the word of God, so it must be true. The doctor raises an eyebrow, shaking his head. With all due respect, life doesn't begin until birth. It's only when a baby takes its first breath that it truly starts living. The priest and doctor go back and forth, their voices getting louder and drawing the attention of everyone around. That's when the old man, who had been quietly sipping his drink, clears his throat. "You're both mistaken," he says with a grin. "My wife and I agree. Life begins when the kids finally move out of the house." Two men were sitting next to each other at O'Malley's pub in Boston. After a while, one man turns to the other and says, "I can't help but think, from listening to you, that you're from Scotland?" The other man replies proudly, "Aye, that I am." The first man grins, "So am I. And where in Scotland might you be from?" The other responds, "I'm from Edinburgh. I am." The first man's eyes widen. "Well, would you look at that? I'm from Edinburgh too. What neighborhood did you live in back in Edinburgh?" The other man says, "A charming little spot. Rose Street, right in the heart of town." The first man can hardly believe it. "Saints above, it's a small world. I lived on Rose Street too." "And which school did you attend?" The other man replies, "I went to St. Andrews, naturally." The first man gets even more excited. "Unbelievable. I went to St. Andrews as well. Tell me, what year did you graduate?" The other thinks for a moment and says, "Let's see. I graduated in 1975. The first man exclaims, "This is amazing. I graduated from St. Andrews in 1975 too. Can you believe the odds of us meeting here tonight?" A young city biker walks into a seedy tavern in Sturgis, South Dakota. Sturgis. He finally made it. He had several items on his must-do list, and this tavern was one of them. The chili, he'd been told, was world famous. As he sits down at the bar, he notices a grizzled old biker with his arms folded, staring blankly at a full bowl of chili. The young biker excitedly ordered a bowl, but was told, "Sorry, just ran out." Disappointed, he orders a beer, wondering if he'd be able to come back on his way home. After a few minutes of noticing the old biker still just sitting there, the new byrider bravely asks the old biker, "If you ain't gonna eat that, mind if I do?" The old veteran of 1,000 rides slowly turns his head toward the young pup and says, "Nah, you go ahead." Eagerly, the guy wearing the shiny new leather fashions reaches over and slides the bowl into his place and starts spooning it in with delight. He gets nearly down to the bottom of the bowl and notices a dead mouse in the chili. Eyes wide and gut-wrenching, he suddenly throws up the chili back into the bowl. The old biker quietly says, "Yep, that's as far as I got too." A mother-in-law arrives home from the mall to find her son-in-law boiling angry and hurriedly packing his suitcase. "What happened?" she asks anxiously. "What happened? I'll tell you what happened. I sent an email to my wife telling her I was coming home today from my business trip. I get home, and guess what I found? Yes, your daughter, my wife, with a guy in our marital bed. This is unforgivable. The end of our marriage, I'm done. I'm leaving forever." Calm down, my son," says his mother-in-law. "There is something very odd going on here. My daughter would never do such a thing. There must be a simple explanation. I'll go speak to her immediately and find out what happened." Moments later, the mother-in-law comes back with a big smile. "I told you there must be a simple explanation. She didn't get the email." A man had a habit of giving a beggar $1,000 every month. This went on for a long time, and the beggar grew accustomed to this generosity. However, one day, the man handed the beggar only $750. The beggar was surprised but thought, $750 is still more than nothing, and accepted the money without complaint. A month later, the man gave only $500. The beggar was taken aback and, feeling a bit uneasy, asked the man, "You used to give me $1,000, then $750, and now it's only $500. Why the change? Can you explain? The man sighed and replied, "In the past, when my children were young, I was in a better financial situation, so I gave you $1,000. But then my daughter went to university, and her tuition fees were high, so I had to reduce it to $750. Now my second son is also in university, and the costs have risen further, so I'm only able to give $500. The beggar, still puzzled, asked, "How many children do you have?" The man answered, "4. The beggar raised an eyebrow and said, "So, will you continue educating all your children at my expense?" Sometimes people come to view your kindness and generosity as an obligation rather than a gift, forgetting that it comes from your heart, not their entitlement. Mrs. Jones wanted a picture for her living room. She took the bus and went to town. She looked for a picture shop, and after a few minutes she found one. There were some pictures in the window, but she did not like them very much. She went into the shop and looked at some other pictures. She liked some of those more. There was a picture of a young girl, and Mrs. Jones liked it very much. She went to the shopkeeper and said, "How much do you want for this picture?" The shopkeeper turned the picture round. He looked at the back of it and then said, £13. £30, Mrs. Jones said. "That's very expensive. I'm going to offer you £20 for it." "I said £13, not £30, the man answered. "13, Mrs. Jones said. "Then I'm going to offer you £9 for it." A 95-year-old man and his 94-year-old wife see a lawyer about a divorce. The lawyer asks them when they got married. "I was 19 inches, says the man. "That means you've been married for 75 years at least," the lawyer points out. "Yes, and all of it misery," says the woman. "Really? When did you start to regret the marriage?" "Almost immediately," says the man. "I hated her after about 2 years, and every year it gets worse. Everything about her is obnoxious and irritating." "Oh," says the woman. "I lasted 3 years, but after that, tolerating him in any way has been a huge problem. He has awful habits and treats me like trash." The lawyer thinks for a moment. "Well, I can help you to get divorced, but why did you wait so long to apply for one if you've hated each other the whole time?" She says, "We were waiting for the children to die." 3 friends, all vampires, decided to have a competition to see who was the fastest and most daring among them. The first vampire stepped up. "Watch this," he said confidently. He took off, flying at 100 miles per hour. 10 minutes later, he returned with a smug look on his face. The others asked, "What did you do?" "See that house over there?" he said, pointing. They nodded. "Well, I swooped in, startled everyone inside, and flew out before they even knew what happened." The others were impressed. "Not bad." The second vampire grinned. "Now watch this." He launched into the air, flying at 120 miles per hour. In just 5 minutes, he was back, looking even prouder than the first. The others asked, "What did you do?" "See that village over there?" he said, pointing. They nodded eagerly. "Well, I zipped through every street so fast that people barely saw me coming." The first vampire clapped. "Impressive." Finally, the third vampire smirked. "All right, get ready for this." He shot into the sky at 140 miles per hour, but barely 30 seconds later, he crashed back down, dazed and covered in dirt and leaves. The others gasped. "What happened?" "See that huge tree over there?" he asked. "Yeah." "Well, I didn't."